Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Freedom Off-Road adjustable front control arms for the 2 to 4 inch lifted 2005 to 2015 Tacomas. These control arms are going to be a great option for Tacoma owners looking to regain proper alignment, improve that suspension geometry, and add strength to their 2 to 4 inch lifted rig. The standout feature of these control arms is their full adjustability, allowing you to dial in precise camber and caster settings on the Tacomas lifted between 2 and 4 inches. That adjustability is key to restoring correct alignment specs, which can be thrown off by aftermarket suspension lifts, reducing tire wear, and improving handling responsiveness. These control arms are designed to accommodate increased suspension travel and articulation, which is essential for off-roading. The high-angle ball joints allow for smoother motion through broader range of suspension movement, reducing risk of binding or premature wear when you're tackling uneven terrain. Also, they come equipped with high-quality polypropylene bushings to provide improved durability and responsiveness over the stock rubber bushings. Those poly bushings help minimize flex and movement during cornering or heavy suspension articulation, offering better feedback without sacrificing too much ride comfort. These control arms also work well with a variety of lift setups, including spacer lifts and coilover conversions, making them a versatile solution for most off-roaders and overland builds. So whether you're daily driving or crawling over some rocky trails, these will help keep your Tacoma driving smooth and straight. Constructed from thick, heavy-duty steel, these control arms are built to withstand abuse and heavy off-road use. The black powder coat finish offers corrosion resistance and long-lasting durability against those elements. The robust welds, reinforced pivot points, and high-angle ball joints ensure strength and stability throughout the entire suspension cycle. Now, as far as pricing goes on this, it's coming in right around that upper $700 price range for the full set. For a fully adjustable setup that corrects alignment, adds durability, and improves articulation, this represents a pretty solid value for lifted Tacoma owners who demand performance and reliability. Installation on this can be a little bit involved, but it's getting rated just a strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and you can have this done in about 1 hour of your time. Now let's head on out to the shop, and we're going to give you a detailed walkthrough of exactly how that install process goes.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a chisel, hammer, 19, 22, and 24 millimeter wrenches, needle nose pliers, a caliper hook, flathead screwdriver, an extension, swivel adapter, 17 and 19 millimeter swivel sockets, 10, 12, 17, 19, 22, 24, and 35 millimeter sockets, a ball joint tool, bungee cord, pry bar, and a pole jack or a floor jack. What's up, guys? Today we're installing an upper and lower control arm kit on our Tacoma, so let's get started. So the first thing we gotta do is get our knuckle out of here. So I'm gonna start by disconnecting our brake and ABS brackets, and I'll get the sway bar end link while we're in that area. So I'm gonna start with a 10 millimeter socket on this top bracket. You can just pop that out of the way, throw your bolt back so you don't lose it. And then switch to a 12 millimeter socket for the brake line bracket. Same thing, thread that bolt back in. And then grab a 17 millimeter socket for the sway bar end link. Pop that out, and I'm just gonna do the same thing there. Next, we're gonna remove our caliper. We've got two 17 millimeter bolts holding that onto our knuckle. I've got a caliper hook here so that we can hang that up out of the way, make sure we don't put any pressure on our brake lines. So grab a 17 millimeter swivel socket and remove those two bolts. Then just get a hand on the caliper before you remove the second one. And now you can wiggle your caliper off of the rotor. Get that hung onto your hook. And connect it up to the frame. Next, we can remove our rotor. Now, when I popped our caliper off, our rotor broke free, so we can just pull this off. If yours is stuck on the hub, you have this cutout here in the dust shield where the caliper sits. So you can get a rubber mallet behind it and give it a couple smacks. You can rotate the hub here if you need to hit it from a different angle, and eventually you'll get that to pop free. Next, we need to pop off this cover for our axle nut. Now you can do that using a chisel and a hammer, or if you have a flathead screwdriver that's old that you don't care about, you can use that too. And just work your way around and get that to pull out. And then you can wedge that in between once you have a little gap, and then hit that chisel backwards to pop it out. Now next we can grab a pair of needle nose pliers to remove our cotter pin as well as cover, and then we'll get access to the axle nut. So just bend these sides back straight, and then you can grab it from the other side, pull that out, remove your cover. Now grab a 35mm axle socket to remove the nut. I like to push on it while I do it, and sometimes it helps dislodge the axle from the splines. Next, we'll disconnect our tie rod end. So same idea as the axle nut. Bend back the sides of your cotter pin, and then pull that out from the other side. And then take a 19mm socket to remove the nut. And then you can grab a hammer to beat on the side of the knuckle here to pop that tie rod end loose. Next, we can come up to our upper control arm ball joint. Grab your needle nose pliers to pull out your cotter pin. And then grab a 19mm swivel socket. We're gonna loosen up this castle nut. You don't wanna pull it all the way off. So we'll just leave it on a couple threads there, and then tap the knuckle with a hammer, just like for the tie rod, until that breaks free. And then you can pull down, spin your nut off the rest of the way. Next, we can disconnect this connector for our ABS. So just grab a pick and press down on the tab at the back here and pop that off. There's also going to be a clip on this bracket here. Ours is broken, but you can take a clip remover tool to pop that off. And now we can remove these two 19mm bolts holding our lower ball joint cradle. Now this is the last thing holding our knuckle on besides our axle and the hub. So just make sure you have a hand on it before you pull that out so it doesn't fall out. And then we're just gonna have to wiggle it off the axle. So I'm taking a 19mm swivel socket to pull these bolts out. Now I've got my hand on the knuckle. Now you can lift up, pop your axle out, and remove your knuckle. So now with our knuckle out of the way, we can start tackling our upper control arm. We've got these two covers that we're gonna have to pop out. They're just held in by a bunch of push clips. So you can just pull back on these to pop them out. If they're a little stiff, you can use a clip remover tool to get behind them to pop them out. And now we can grab a 19mm wrench and socket to remove the nut on our upper control arm. And twist that nut and washer the rest of the way off. And then we can start removing our bolt. Now you're most likely going to have to grab a pair of vice grips to pull back on this fender metal here to have enough room to slide your bolt through. Now we've done so many lift kits and control arms on this truck that ours is pretty good and bent there. So we're going to see if we can get it without having to do that. So just keep this washer on the control arm and slide that bolt back. So now I'm going to grab an extension and put it in through the opposite side of the control arm, and then just take a hammer and give it some taps. While you're doing this, you just want to get a hand up here. Make sure you're not up against any wires or anything that you're going to snag when you do this. And we're still nice and clear. Also watch out for this brake line here. And then we should be able to just pull that the rest of the way through. Now I'm just going to leave this bolt here hanging out so we don't have to go through a bunch of maneuvering to get that back in when we install our new control arm. So now with our upper control arm out of the way, we can work on our lower control arm. Now one of our pivot bolts is behind the skid plate, so we're going to have to remove that. But before we do anything, I'm gonna grab a bungee cord for our axle and just hook it onto the strut here. Keep it supported, because right now it is resting on the lower control arm. So just get it around the shaft portion of it and just hook it onto your strut. And now we can tackle that skid plate and get that out of there. So now we have 2 bolts at the back and 2 bolts at the front of our skid plate. Now at the front, we also have a couple hooks that this hooks onto. You don't have to fully remove this if you don't want to. You can just loosen up the bolts and swing it down. That's what I'm gonna do. So just grab a 12mm socket and pull all these bolts out. And just get a hand on it before you pull your last one out. And we can just tilt that down and let it rest on those hooks. Next, we can take a 19mm socket and wrench to remove our lower strut bolt. Now my socket's getting stuck up against the lower control arm here, so I'm just gonna hit it with a hammer. That's gonna push the bolt towards the other side and give me room to get this out. And then you can fully remove your nut and washer from the one side and pull out your bolt on the other side. Now if yours is stuck in there like mine, take that 19mm wrench, get it behind the head of the bolt and pry backwards, and you can get your socket on there to help you as well. So now the last thing we need to do is remove our 2 pivot bolts here. Now in terms of alignment, I've gone ahead and made a mark with a marker, lining up our alignment bolt with the frame here. Now we do have new bolts included in this kit, so this will just be a reference for around where your alignment should be. I went ahead and did that on both sides of both pivot points. So once you have that done, grab a 22mm socket and wrench. On the forwardmost pivot point here, you're gonna wanna turn the bolt side, and on the rearmost pivot point, you wanna turn the nut side. And then while you're loosening these up, just be careful, because once you release the pressure on here, this lower control arm can swing down and get you pretty good. And we'll get on the nut side on this side. Once again, just be careful of that lower control arm swinging down once you loosen this bolt up. And now just remove your nut and your alignment plate, followed by your bolt. Rotate that plate down so you can clear the axle. And then you're removing the bolt first on this side. And then get a hand on that control arm before you pull this out and remove it. So now the last thing we need to do for the uninstall is to remove our lower ball joint cradle from our lower control arm so we can transfer that over to our new one. I've got a 24mm nut here. There's usually a cotter pin here, although ours isn't there, so that's good. So take a pair of needle nose pliers, and just like all the other cotter pins, just bend it back straight, pop that out. And then you can take your 24mm socket, remove the nut, and then I've got a ball joint tool here to pop that off. Now with that out of the way, I'm gonna get the 2 teeth around the cradle here, and then get this cap on top of my bolt. Tighten it up as much as you can by hand. And then grab a 17mm socket and just slowly tighten down this bolt. These like to explode once they finally pop that ball joint off, so watch your face. And once that pops free, you can pop your cradle off and do the same thing on the other side. So now we can install our new lower control arms. Now these are side specific, so match them up to your factory ones. Then just slide it into place. There's 2 bolts. The thinner one's going to the rear mount. Slide your alignment plate on there. Thread the nut on. We're gonna leave all of our bushings loose until the end so that we can tighten them down with a load on the suspension. And then the other bolt is gonna be thicker and have this sleeve on it. Slide your plate and nut on the other side. And then we're gonna swing this up to connect to our lower strut. So now swing your lower control arm up to meet your bottom of your strut. And then just push that into place to line up the bolt. Slide that through, and then grab your washer and your nut for the other side. Now, once again, we're gonna leave that loose for now as well. And now once we have our lower control arm mounted up, we can grab that bungee cord, take it off the axle, and let the axle rest on the lower control arm. And then we'll move on to our upper arm. And now comes the fun part of getting our upper control arm bolt back in. Now, one quick thing to note, make sure that this side of the control arm goes underneath of that ABS wire. And then grab your bolt, slide it into the hole, and then just get it lined up with that slot. Pull that down and through as far as you can get it. And then once you have that bolt through, grab your washer and your nut for the other side. Thread that on. And once again, we have bushings up here, so we're just gonna leave that loose for now. Now we just need to get ready to throw our knuckle back on. So pull the nut off of your ball joint, pop that cover off, and you can throw that back on there for now. Now do that same thing on the top. Now on the top one, you can leave that nut off. I'm gonna get our knuckle onto our axle and the upper ball joint first, and then we can deal with the cradle on the lower ball joint. So now you can grab your knuckle. I'm gonna get my axle slid in first. Make sure those splines are lined up. And then we'll slide our upper control arm into our knuckle. Now I'm putting a socket over that ball joint because it's not wanting to move. So I'm gonna use that as leverage to get my angle right. And then connect that together. And then thread on your nut to hold that into place for right now. Next, we can reinstall our lower ball joint cradle. So take that nut off your lower ball joint, slide that on, thread your nut on, and then we'll grab our two bolts. You might have to pull the knuckle to get those to line up. And then just grab a 19mm socket, make sure they're threading nicely before you go ahead and hammer them down. And then you can put your impact gun on the other side and tighten those down. And then you can switch to your 24mm socket to tighten down your lower ball joint nut. Now you want to tighten this and then make sure that the slot in the castle nut lines up with the hole in the stud. Now if it's not lined up enough to get your cotter pin through, you want to go back and tighten it a little bit more until it lines up. You never want to loosen this to get those holes lined up. And our slot here is covering our hole, so we need to tighten a little more. Right there we look pretty good. So I'll go ahead and grab my cotter pin. Grab your cotter pin and your needle nose pliers. Slide it through that hole. And then we'll grab that longer side first and bend that around our castle nut. And then we'll just go the opposite way with the other side. Just give it a couple whacks to flatten them out and you're good to go. Now next we can reinstall our axle nut. Now before you thread this on and start hammering it with a gun, you want to make sure that your splines are engaged. So if you rotate the hub a little bit and your axle is spinning with it, then you should be good to go. Just thread that nut on and then we'll grab that 35mm axle socket and pull that the rest of the way through. And then we can put our lock ring back, slide our cotter pin through, and then grab your needle nose again, bend those around that clip. And then you can put your cover back on, just get it lined up. And then you can grab a rubber mallet, just give it one big smack and get it into place. And now we can take a 19mm swivel socket to tighten down our upper ball joint. Once again, tighten until that hole lines up. Right there, we're looking good. So you can take that cotter pin that we pulled out of our factory upper control arm, slide that into place. Next, we can grab our ABS connector, push that in until you hear the click. And if your clip up here is good, clip that back into place. And then grab your tie rod, remove your castle nut, slide that in. Thread your nut back on. Same thing with this ball joint as all the others. Tighten it down and then tighten it a little more until that hole lines up. And now grab your cotter pin, slide it through the hole. And then take your needle nose pliers and bend those in opposite directions. Now we can reinstall our rotor. And I'm just gonna throw a lug nut on one of the studs just to hold it flat. That will make it a lot easier to slide our caliper over the rotor. And I will move on to that caliper. So now grab your caliper off your hook and then just spread your brake pads apart. Slide that over your rotor. And then you can grab your bolts and thread those in. And once you have them both threading nicely, take your 17mm swivel socket and tighten them down. And now we can reconnect our two brackets and our end link. Now we've replaced our bolt with a stud and a nut for our top bracket. It's still gonna be that same 10mm. Slide your end link through. And then remove the bolt for your brake line bracket. Slide that into place. And then we've got a 10mm socket for the top bracket. And then 17 for the end link. And then finally a 12mm socket for our brake line bracket. So now we're ready to go back and tighten down all of those bushings that we left loose. Now I'm gonna start with the lower control arm pivot points. So what you're gonna wanna do is take your factory bolt, figure out where your mark is. Now our line's pretty centered here, so we're gonna be down by the bolt, so we're gonna have to rotate this around. Once again, this isn't gonna be exact, it's just gonna be good enough to get you to the alignment shop to get a professional alignment done. So we're looking at right about there with our alignment mark. I've got a 22mm wrench there, spinning that. And then I'm gonna grab a 22mm socket for the other side. I've got a 22mm socket with a swivel adapter to tighten this down. And now we're just gonna do the same thing on the other side. We just have to switch out our tools for 24mm socket and wrench. It's gonna be the same thing. Find your alignment mark, just get it as close as possible. Grab your 24mm wrench, turn that bolt until it's lined up. Hold up your other bolt for comparison. And then get your 24mm socket with a swivel adapter on the other side and tighten that down. So now with that pole jack or floor jack still putting a load on your suspension, go back up top with your 19mm socket and wrench and tighten down your upper control arm bolt. And then once you have that tightened down, you can grab your two covers and reinstall those. Just push those clips into their spots. There's one here as well that we're missing. And now to wrap up the suspension part of this, take a 19mm socket and wrench on our lower strut bolt and tighten that one down. And now with all your bushings tightened down, you can remove your pole jack or floor jack. And now lastly, come back to your skid plate and swing it up to line up with your bolt holes. If you fully took this off, put it back on the hooks and then slide it into place. And then start threading in your bolts. And then grab your 12mm socket and tighten all of those down. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Freedom Off-Road adjustable front control arms for 2 to 4 inch lift for your 2005 to 15 6-lug Tacoma. Thank you for watching, and for all things Tacoma, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.